Hello, my name is Opal Hope Bennett, shorts programmer and director of filmmaker development for Doc NYC. Thank you so much for joining us for On the Record, and it's my pleasure to uh, introduce the filmmakers, Kirby Dick, Amy Ziering. We're going to have a chat with them to talk about making the film. Welcome, Kirby and Amy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good to see you both. And of course, the film is on the short list and recognized as one of the best this year. So we're really glad to have you and to recognize your brilliant efforts here. So let's dig in. In a time when Me Too had gained significant traction, you took on a story that highlighted a struggle that the movement sort of missed, and that's the Black women's particular plight when dealing with sexual harassment. And I'm curious whether it was addressing this story that came to you first, or whether it was Drew Dixon's story that came and then you kind of came to the issue through her.
It was the latter. We were casting a wide net in the wake of Me Too and just talking to survivors from all different industries. And we were in New York and we did about a week of interviews, and one of the interviews was Drew. And at the end of the interview, I looked around, I thought it was powerful, but I always sort of gut checked just to see how the crew is. And I looked around and like three of them were in tears. And I called Kirby and I said, this woman's story is remarkable, A, and B, she's in the midst of like a really torturous decision. Like we met her when she was just sort of grappling with, she didn't even sign a release for the interview I did with her. She was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll talk to you as long as it's for now off the record. And that was our agreement. So it was through Drew, and then, getting her trust and getting to know her and watching her through her journey as she sort of helped guide us and unpack the issue for us in a way that was so revelatory and we thought essential to tell.
Yeah, definitely. And certainly the other women who you profile in the film as well. How did you, get to have so many women share their stories when exactly the point of the film, like being on the record and coming up and speaking up with such a difficult matter?
Kirby, do you want to go?
Well, sure. I mean, I think the fact that we'd made the invisible war in the hunting ground certainly gave, a lot of these survivors a lot of confidence. Also, the fact that, we had done a lot of research on this subject. We had certainly investigated this subject. There was no question that we believed them. And I think it made for a secure place for them to come out. But it's always, for survivors, it's always a big step. I mean, certainly that's what the film is about. It's about the big steps that Drew takes. I mean, she not only took the step to come out in the New York Times, but it took about a year before she felt really she was ready to become a documentary, because and that's something as filmmakers we try to do, is we try to make people comfortable. We try to explain what they're going to go forward with, and because it's a big step and we really know that.
Yeah, absolutely. You spoke to the work that you did in research and learning the topic, and I think it's probably easiest for topics like these to once you get the trust and gain that intimacy, be able to tell the story purely through the survivors' voices, but you actually have meaty sections in the film where you're expounding on the issue. Talk about why it was important to you to have that approach in the film.
You want to take this, Amy, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was important, as with all our films that we tend to do. We sort of take you on a journey of a personal story, but in the course of that journey, which you're completely affected onto, and we want you really to identify with the main subjects, and their plight, we also feed you information throughout. So, in Visible War, we had experts throughout and statistics and studies that sort of laid the groundwork for the case of this not being sort of one-off anomalies, but a systemic problem in our military. And likewise, in the hunting ground, we had these profoundly affecting stories, but also interwoven with, showing how this is a campus, issue, and sort of the ways in which, there's a perfect storm environment on campuses to have these crimes be committed in this way. Likewise here, we saw Drew as, oh my God, and Salai Abrams and Sherry Sher, I should say, and all the women in the film. Their stories were incredible and incredibly powerful. But it was very important to us that we also made sure people understood the incredibly unique underlying issues that face women of color in this country when they come forth and report, and that really we hadn't seen explored quite in this way yet, certainly in the mainstream media.
Well, I just want to add to what Amy is saying is that obviously Black feminism has been exploring this issue for a long, long time, and I think their work has been really revolutionary. Unfortunately, it has. We felt that it was very important to hear those voices directly and hear that analysis directly from them, because not only had they experienced it, but they had thought about it, had explored it for a long, long time. And it was, for us, it was, we knew very early on, once we interviewed Drew, that and she sort of opened up this whole issue for us, that those voices would be very, very important.
It was incredibly important to us that not only did you see these stories firsthand, but you also heard from the wisdom of women like Dr. Joan Morgan, Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, Shanita Hubbard, and Kierna Mayo, who have been living this, thinking this, analyzing this, the systemic issues that face women of color when they are afflicted by these crimes. And, and really share with audiences, mostly, white audiences that haven't ever reflected in this way on the uniqueness of that plight. And that's what we kept hearing over and over again from people in response to this film was, oh my God, this opened up a world that we'd never seen or even thought about, sort of just the additional weight and barriers that affect women when they come forward because of systemic racism, just how much even harder it is to, to report, to be believed, etc.
So I thought it was unique in looking at the responses to your two prior films. You've really been focused on the issue of women dealing with sexual harassment, sexual violence, and in the your two prior films, there was definitely, Visible War, Hunting Ground, much more of a I don't know, direct response and direct effect. And, in contrast with this film, it's been, you see that it's cathartic for the women, but in terms of looking at, folks' responses to it, it's not like, the men accused of just sort of like, sent a release denying it, and life goes on. So I'm curious to hear from, the both of you, given the fact that, those accused at the center of this, it's not like you get like the, reaffirming circumstance where, like Harvey Weinstein was let out in handcuffs, or, other accused have been fired or what have you. These men have just, had PR releases and gone on with their lives. What do you see as the strength in the outcome and the impact of these women on their stories?
Well, I think the impact's still TBD, right? I think in some respects, this film's a little anomalous in that we really got hit by COVID. We had a Sundance screenings and that was it, and then COVID, and that has really limited the ability for us to do what we typically do in ways that, we release a film and are able to galvanize and marshal forces and start a grassroots movement, a grass tops movement. So in part it's that, in part you do wonder, is it systemic racism? You can't help but wonder that. Yeah. In part, Black Lives Matter a little bit eclipsed the ability for women's voices to be heard in the same way. So it's a whole conflation of things, but I am hopeful if we do see an administrative sea change and things settle down in this country, and COVID lifts, this film, I think, rightfully should join its place and be somewhat of a landmark and a touchstone and a turning point, for women's rights in this country, women of color. But, it's been a whole conflation of forces that have not allowed that to happen yet. And I also want to say that, its ability to come out into the world was really rocky too, and that should itself be looked at as an instructive lesson in the powers of.
Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that or not. So I didn't
Well,
raise it.
it is part of it, and it's instructive, right? I mean, it's a meta lesson. It's not an accident, right? That prior to release, certain powerful people felt they had to remove their names who had before, just 10 days earlier, like put out a press release, championing the film and championing their love for it.
Right.
Right. I just want to add to what Amy said. This was also we wanted to explore issues around sexual assault in a somewhat different way in this film by focusing on the experiences of one person. I mean, Drew is such a phenomenal subject. I mean, that, not only in the ways she tells her story, but in the way that she's thought about it and analyzed it, and from so many different perspectives. And so to be able to see somebody go through the arc of her story in the way that you did in such a personal and intimate way and be with her, we thought was a way of giving a different perspective to this entire experience.
Okay. And briefly, because we've only got a couple more minutes, since we don't have our audience here, please share what you would like audience members to take away from viewing On the Record.
Oh my God. I mean, the importance of I mean, we owe this election to Black women. I mean, we owe them our lives, we owe them our country, we owe them, we are the problem, not them. I mean, so like, it's about time we start listening to them, champion them, and lifting them up, and really helping them heal from the trauma we've inflicted. I mean, that's the big lesson for white people, at least, is, God damn it, wake up and, and really start empathizing and understanding, what the legacy of our oppression has done and what we need to do to start helping, not have that continue to occur.
Yeah, and as a country, seeing the value in their leadership, I would say.
Oh my God.
I think that is something that I am hopeful in the next 10 or 20 years. I mean, I really hope that this country will turn in another direction, a new direction, and I think if it does, it's in large part because of their leadership.
Hopefully, the next 4 years we'll have a particular woman to watch.
Yes,
as simple as
exactly.
That. Amy, Kirby, thank you so much for joining
you.
us.
Thank you.
For your work here. And thank you, audience, for enjoying On the Record with us. Please be sure to enjoy some more films. Come back and see us at Doc NYC. For now, we say goodbye.